Hello, my sketchy friends. Welcome back if you're coming back, or welcome all together if you're just getting started with me. I thought we would paint some daffodils today and kind of get ready for spring. It's in my world right this moment, it's kind of looking like it could be spring anytime. So what have I got here? I have got my pattern that I've traced onto a piece of 140-pound cold press paper. I have my palette. I'm going to spray it with some water just to kind of get this back in action. It dissolves the gum arabic that holds the watercolor pigments into the paint. And that's the difference between watercolor and oil and acrylic. It's what holds it together. And in this case, gum arabic is the same glue that you would use on the back of an envelope. So when you lick it and then stick it on, when it dries, it sticks it back to the paper, which is what happens here. Okay, so here's our daffodils. We've got 1, 2, 3 colors of yellow and burnt sienna kind of as a bit of a darkening agent. We've got some green, a little bit of red, and I think that's all we're going to need to do this painting. So the really big deal when you're doing any kind of watercolor painting is to decide where you want to start and where you can paint so that one thing doesn't get involved with the next thing. So in this case, I'm going to paint this daffodil first, then I'm going to paint this daffodil, and then I'll go down here and paint these stems and the bowl, and then go paint these leaves afterwards so that they don't all bleed together. Because if you paint the thing right beside it, they like to bleed together. So I know that these leaves have, one is over top of it, so there's going to be some shadows and stuff in behind things. So when we put our lovely yellow, this is Hansa Yellow Light, onto here. This is a beautiful daffodil color. Ooh, daffodils are my absolute favorite color, or favorite paint, flower. I love them. When we got married, I was in New Brunswick and my husband was out here in Vancouver, and I wanted daffodils in my wedding bouquet, and they said, no, you can't possibly. It was the end of March. And he showed up with 350 daffodils in boxes from Vancouver. That's sweet. All right, so now I've got this yellow. If I want this a little bit lighter, I just have to take my paper towel and just kind of dry off my brush a little bit. Usually I just use a sponge in order to tap off the water on this. So a little bit, that makes it lighter, a little bit around this edge kind of thing, and a little bit on the top of this. I'm going to go get some of this darker yellow, bring it out here and mix it with whatever yellow was actually on the palette to begin with, and go in and put a darker color that in there. Some darker color. I'm going to get a little bit of this Naples yellow and put some up on here just so that I've got some different colors along these edges. And lo and behold, it doesn't take a whole lot, and you've got yourself, because this is all pretty much one color, right? And I'm just going to darken this a little bit. Here's some burnt sienna that I went and got out of here, and darken this a little bit more. Because this is damp, I can still carry on and put some paint into here. As soon as it starts to get to the point where it is tacky, then you can't put paint on it. Well, you can, but then it just makes marks and stuff. So there we go. There's the part of the stem that is in there. And I'm just going to darken this a little tiny bit more, even use a little tiny bit of the raw umber, because this part really needs to be dark. Not a lot, but you can see how it sort of bleeds out. And I think that actually is a bit oranger in there. There we go. All right. So now let's go over here while this is drying. I'm just going to tap that around a little tiny bit so that it's not so obvious. Same old deal. I'm just going to go in and I'll paint it a different way just so you can see there's a couple of ways to do it. I'm going to start with some yellow on the tips of these, right? And that's the Naples yellow. I'm going to wipe that off. I'll go get a little tiny bit of the Hansa yellow and add that into it. So the other one I painted the whole thing first. This one here I'm just kind of going along and putting some colors along with it. I'm going to get a little darker color. Ooh, that's quite thick. And you can see out here that it's quite thick because it's almost opaque on the palette. So I'm just going to add a bit of water to that so that I don't have it really thick. If I want to darken it, I can always go back in and add some. So there's the darker color that I'm going to put into here. And so I've just made sure that I paint along the side of this and that it bumps into the next paint, but it isn't completely overpowering it. I'm going to go back in and take a little bit of my burnt sienna, stick some in here. And may even need to take a little bit of that off of there. And even a little bit of green on here is always good because not all of it's yellow. There we go. And this needs to be a little bit darker in here. So see, you can just use a little tiny bit of this color that's in here and tap it on. Let's see here. Ooh, that's too dark, way too dark. Let's go get some paint here. There we go. Alrighty. And I'm taking a bit of the vermilion red and a bit of this orangey color and just kind of adding a bit of color to these edges. It's still kind of soupy, so I can go back in and mess with this stuff. Now, to me, this is all starting to look exactly the same, so I've messed with it too much. So let's go back in and take some of this off. There we go. That's looking better. Can actually determine what's what. This is over top of that one there, so I can go in and lighten that up a little bit. There we go. Little bit of color in there yet, a little tiny bit of the yellow. All right, let's leave it for right now. Now I'm going to go in and put these stems in down here. Here's my sap green. We'll start with that. That's quite thick. It's because I've been painting with it and spraying it, so it's quite gushy. I like using the paint that has dried in the palettes as opposed to squeezing out clean paint every time. There's lots of people that like to do that, to squeeze out the paint. I like it. I find that I have a bit more control over it if it's damp already, or if it's dry, and then I can dampen it to whatever I want. So this is going to get darker in behind because this petal is over top of this one. This is here. There's the other leaf that's up here. Yeah. There's this leaf in here. And I think we probably need some other colors in here in this green. So I'm going to add a bit of yellow because obviously yellow and blue go together to make green. And I'm going to add a little tiny bit of Prussian blue over here. And that really greens it up. It's sort of makes it into more of a turquoisey kind of green on that side. There we go. And I'm going to add a bit more Prussian blue up here into this little section here because it's right in behind the daffodil. So you're going to have a bit of a shadow kind of thing in there. All right. And this is that kind of papery stuff that goes over the edge of the daffodil, the stem where the two pieces connect. And I think I need a little bit more light yellow on here. This is still wet. Now, because this is down in the water, this is still a bit damp, so I'm going to use a bit of my manganese blue on the vase. And there's the water. And so these stems are still a little bit damp, so they're going to blur a bit, which is kind of what I want them to do because then it looks like they're underwater. I'm going to go and take a little bit darker color, add this across the front. There we go. And I'll put a little bit of purple kind of in this and just connect this to the ground. If you hold your brush sort of on the side, you can see how this just sort of blends out and it'll kind of skip across the paper. A little bit of the texture of the paper comes out. I'm going to put some Prussian blue in this edge right here where the vase would be seated on the counter, because it would be casting a shadow, and I don't mind that this sort of sucks up into here. I've got a little bit of this Prussian blue still on my brush, so I'm just going to go in here. There we go. A little bit of yellow. Maybe a little bit of green. And kaboom! We have daffodils. Happy spring, everybody. I hope you enjoy your daffodils as much as I do. I'll see you painting again.